Now, I know that I'm a couple years behind, but I finally got around to watching the collector movies, and I have some thoughts that might surprise some of you guys. Let's get into it. Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Nick here from the Lost River Drive-In, and today I want to talk to you about the collector, the collection, and the collected. Now, I've got to first start off by saying that I had intended years ago to go back and watch these two movies when it was announced that Patrick Melton and Marcus Dunstan were going to be the creative team leading Halloween Returns. And if you remember, on my channel last year, I detailed what Halloween Returns was going to be, and I actually quite liked their idea. But I hadn't really been exposed to these guys yet. And I knew these movies existed and I knew they had a fan base. But I was always under the impression that the collection was seen as better by a lot of fans. So going into this, I was worried because anytime you go into a budgeting series where the first film is actually considered to be weaker than the next one, it's almost like, I gotta get through this to get to the next one. And I didn't really see it that way. So like I said, written by Patrick Melton and directed by Marcus Dunstan, The Collector is a movie that was a low-budget film that has really grown a cult following over the years. I didn't know much going into it except there was going to be a collector-type character, and I assumed that would mean that he was a murderer. But aside from that, I knew nothing of the premise. So sitting down to watch this movie, I was like, okay, well, it's probably going to be low budget. I hope it's not hard to watch. That's not to say that low budget movies are always like that, because they're not. But I was definitely worried. You always go into these kind of things like, please don't look too cheap. I've got to say, just right off the bat, I prefer The Collector to The Collection. I absolutely do. And not only do I prefer it to The Collection, but I actually find The Collector to be a damn good movie. Like, not even one that you would say, like, oh, you know what, it's solid, though. It gets a bad rap, but it's solid. Like, no, this is a movie that I would happily own and watch once a year. Now, there's a lot of reasons for that. First off, it helps that Josh Stewart playing the role of Arkin, he's really, really good in the role. You care about this guy, you care about his plight, you get enough of a backstory and see what's happening in his personal life to care about him. And that makes it a lot easier with these kinds of movies. He's also this kind of anti-hero. He's a bad guy too, but he's doing it for good reasons, and he gets caught in the middle of a situation that no person should ever be caught in the middle of, regardless of what you've done in your past. The collector himself is really, really demented and messed up. A guy that you really just watch through body language and, looking at his eyes. He doesn't say anything, but he's demented, he's twisted, and you can tell that he really gets off on this. But another layer to that is that you can also see the collector is kind of sloppy himself. He makes mistakes. He gets frustrated with himself. Too often he's trying to correct his own mistakes before it's too late. I like that. Because when you're introducing us to a new antagonist in a new series, it really helps to have that antagonist not already be damn near superhuman. Like, they can make no mistakes, they are the cream of the crop, they're the best of the best. It really helps to say, no, they mess up too. They're going to grow with the audience, just as the other characters, the protagonists, are going to grow with the audience. I like that a lot. But the biggest takeaway for me with The Collector, and the reason why I liked it so much, is because it is a kind of marriage of a home invasion movie and a Saw film. Now, obviously, with Marcus Dunstan and Patrick Melton's history, that makes sense, but I didn't know that going into it. So while you have these elements of this very claustrophobic, you're caught between these four walls in this house for the entire movie. And that in and of itself is anxiety inducing, and it plays like a home invasion film. But it's also like a Saw movie because there's booby traps everywhere. There's torture being given to these characters. And it also has that Saw movie look, that gritty, grimy, like ultra realistic, but not like glorifying the violence, although some of the Saw movies did do that. But it really makes it come across as nasty. And I like that. It's like taking a camera through a dirty public restroom and watching the footage from that. That's just what it kind of feels like. And that's what some of the best Saw movies feel like too. I've always really liked that aesthetic, so I liked it a lot in this movie. I walked away from this movie and I was like, dude, that was awesome. I gave it 4 stars on Letterboxd, and I was actually surprised. I would get people DMing me on Instagram and saying, really, you liked it that much? Like, that's crazy. And I was like, I know, because I had heard the next one was the better one. And so, needless to say, I was really excited for The Collection after watching The Collector. And I've got to say, Almost everything good about the Collector is gone in the collection. First and foremost, everything that made the Collector tense and suspenseful and really gave that air of menace over the entire movie is gone in the collection. 10 to 15 minutes into the movie, we're introduced to this kill scene that is just kills for kill's sake, completely out of character for the Collector that we had seen in the first film. Very public execution style mass casualty event. That made no sense to me, because up to this point, the character of the Collector that we had seen was not his MO. Then moving forward, the main plot of this movie, which takes place in like an abandoned hotel, so it's this incredibly large area with a lot higher of a body count, a lot more characters, a lot more that the Collector can do. And guys, I gotta tell you, again, not the MO from the character that we got in the first movie. This movie seemed like they had a bigger budget, so they really wanted to go, okay, let's up the ante here. Let's turn everything up to 11. Although, I don't think that was the right impulse. I think you were working well with what you had in the first movie, and I think you should have kept that tone throughout going forward in the series. Keep it small scale. Keep it in character for the Collector. In this movie, not only did he seem kind of stupid, he made a lot of self-inflicted errors, but again, just everything seemed not like him at all from what I had learned of him in the first movie. I didn't like so many throwaway characters that meant nothing. I didn't like these attempts at these mass casualty events and these big action sequences when that wasn't really the point of the first movie. It's also a bummer to see Arkin reduced to like a secondary character in this movie. That's not to say he doesn't get a similar amount of screen time. He probably does, but he's definitely a supporting character. He's not the focus here. And the main girl that we have as the focus here, you don't know anything about her. So like I said with the first movie, you at least like Arkin, you understand his plight, you know some about him, so you feel bad for him. And this one, you're asked to feel bad for this girl that you know nothing about. You don't know anything about why you should like her or care if she lives or dies in the first place. If you're going to ask your audience to root for somebody, you have to give them reasons why. And I could have cared less if this chick was even in the movie. Like, honestly, it just added nothing at all to the movie. And at the end of the day, everything that the first movie had working for it is gone in the second movie. Sure, there's still some good effects, there's some nice kills here and there, and there's a couple fun moments, but it didn't have any tension, it didn't have suspense, it didn't feel like this gritty, realistic home invasion meets Saw. It just, none of that was there in this movie. So I was actually kind of bummed after watching the collection, and then I found myself puzzled, like, why is it that a lot of fans like this one more? Is it for the higher body count? Is it for the bigger budget? Does it come across better? Is it easier on the eyes? I don't know. I really don't know what it is, because I didn't like anything better than the first movie. I even liked the Collector himself less in the second movie. So then, naturally, I knew about this years ago, as we all did, that they had started filming on The Collected, and then after a week or so, it got shut down and never got picked up again. And who knows if it will ever get finished. If I had to guess, probably eventually. I think there's enough of a cult fan base there to where it'll eventually happen. Maybe that's for the best and maybe it's not. But after watching these two movies, I gotta say, if The Collected was being filmed to be anything like The Collection, I'm good without it. I really am. I truly did not care for The Collection. Looking at things on the macro, it is really sad to see that there was such a promising new antagonist, a new horror villain, that had grown a sizable fan base over just a few years, and as quickly as he was here, he was gone. That was really kind of a bummer, because you don't see that happen enough to where you can make a couple movies with one character nowadays and people really get invested. And when it happens, it's really cool. And this could have been one of those, and maybe still could be. I know that nobody involved in these films is ever going to watch this video, and that's totally fine. But my plea to them would be, if you're going to come back and do The Collected at some point, you got to go back to The Collector and not The Collection. You got to go back to this claustrophobic setting. You've got to go back to this gritty presentation. You got to go back to what made that character so intriguing in the first place. Make it small scale. Just because you have a bigger budget doesn't mean you have to go bigger. You can use that budget in other ways. But The Collection just was not it. And if that is where the direction of the series was going to go, then I'm cool after 2 movies. But I want to hear down below what you guys think. I want to know what you think of these 2 movies. Which one you prefer? Are you bummed about the failed attempt at making The Collected, or are you happy that it never saw the light of day? Are you one of the few like me that prefers The Collector to The Collection? I want to hear it all down below in the comments section. I want to thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please leave a like on it. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. This is Nick at the Lost River Drive-In, and I am pulling out.